Hey World Decoders, what if I told you that in 2025, the United States is pulling strings behind the scenes to tighten its grip on global power? From economic maneuvers to military moves, from tech dominance to diplomatic chess games, the signs are everywhere, but are they part of a grand conspiracy to control the world? Today, we're diving deep into the alleged US plot to dominate the globe in 2025. Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride full of shocking revelations. Is America really orchestrating a global takeover, or is it all a myth? Stick around, because what you're about to hear might change how you see the world forever. Let's start with a question. Who really runs the world in 2025? The US has the world's largest economy, the most powerful military, and unmatched influence over global institutions like the UN and IMF. But is this just natural dominance, or something more sinister? Rumors swirling on platforms like X suggest a coordinated effort, a shadowy plan to cement America's control over everything, from finance to technology to geopolitics. And the clues? They're piling up. Let's unpack the first piece of the puzzle. And trust me, it's a big one. Key point 1. Economic warfare and dollar dominance. The US dollar remains the world's reserve currency in 2025, accounting for nearly 60% of global foreign exchange reserves, according to IMF data. This gives America unmatched economic leverage. But here's where it gets juicy. Posts on X claim the US is weaponizing the dollar to control other nations. How? Through sanctions, trade policies, and debt traps. Take Iran and Venezuela. Sanctions have crippled their economies, forcing them to trade in alternative currencies like the UN or crypto. But it's not just adversaries. Even allies like the EU are feeling the heat, with the US pushing for trade deals that favor American corporations. In 2025, the US is also leading the charge in central bank digital currencies. The Federal Reserve's digital dollar pilot, launched in late 2024, is being touted as a way to modernize finance. But critics argue it's a tool for surveillance and control, letting the US track global transactions in real time. Imagine a world where every dollar you spend is monitored by Washington. Sounds dystopian, right? And that's not all. The US is quietly buying up stakes in critical industries like semiconductors and rare earth minerals, ensuring countries like China and Russia stay dependent on American supply chains. Is this just smart economics, or a calculated move to choke out competitors? Speaking of control, what if the US is using technology to spy on the world and maybe even you? Hold that thought, because the next piece of this conspiracy is straight out of a sci-fi movie. Key point 2. Tech dominance and surveillance in 2025. American tech giants like Google, Amazon, and Meta still rule the digital world. But whispers on X suggest they're working hand in hand with the US government to create a global surveillance network. Think about it, 90% of the world's internet traffic flows through US-controlled servers. The NSA's PRISM program, exposed by Edward Snowden years ago, is reportedly still active, scooping up data from every corner of the globe. And now, with AI advancements, the US is allegedly using tools like Palantir's Gotham platform to predict and influence global events. The US leads with over 40% of the world's AI patents, per WIPO data. And companies like XAI pushing boundaries with models like Grok. But here's the twist. Some claim these AI systems are being used to manipulate public opinion abroad. From elections in Africa to protests in South America. Posts on X.2 Project Horizon, an alleged US initiative to deploy AI-driven propaganda to destabilize rival governments. No hard proof exists yet, but the patterns are eerie. And then there's Starlink, Elon Musk's satellite network, which now covers 70% of the globe. Is it just bringing internet to remote areas? Or is it a tool for the US to control global communications? Key point 3. Military expansion and global bases. The US maintains over 700 military bases across 80 countries in 2025, more than any other nation. From Japan to Germany to Djibouti, these bases project American power everywhere. But in 2025, there's a new twist. The US is quietly expanding its presence in the Indo-Pacific to counter China. The Pentagon's 2025 budget, a whopping $850 billion, includes funds for hypersonic weapons, AI-driven drones, and a new Pacific Defense Initiative. Posts on X claim this is part of a containment strategy to encircle China and Russia, with new bases popping up in places like Palau and the Philippines. But it's not just about China. In the Middle East, the US is accused of stirring tensions to justify its presence. The 2025 Abraham Accords expansion, brokered by the US, has brought more Arab states into alignment with Israel. But critics argue it's a ploy to isolate Iran and secure oil routes. And then there's Africa, where US AFRICOM operations have doubled since 2020, allegedly to fight terrorism, but also to secure resources like lithium and cobalt. Is this about global security, or is the US building a military empire under the guise of peacekeeping? If military and tech power weren't enough, the US is playing a high-stakes diplomatic game to lock in its influence. But who's pulling the strings behind closed doors? You won't believe what's coming next. Key point 4. Diplomatic maneuvers and soft power diplomacy is where the US flexes its soft power. And in 2025, it's playing hardball. The US controls key global institutions like the IMF and World Bank, which dictate terms to developing nations. In 2025, the IMF approved $50 billion in loans to countries like Ukraine and Argentina, but with strings attached reforms that often align with US interests, like opening markets to American firms. Critics on X call this economic colonialism, arguing the US uses debt to trap nations in its orbit. Then there's the cultural angle. Hollywood, Netflix, and US media dominate global entertainment, shaping narratives and values. In 2025, American streaming platforms account for 65% of global viewership. Is this just business, or a deliberate push to export American ideology? And let us not forget, foreign aid. $60 billion in US aid flows to countries like Egypt and Jordan, but it often comes with expectations of political loyalty. The US is also leading climate talks, pushing green tech exports while securing access to critical minerals in places like Greenland and Chile. Is this leadership, or a clever way to dominate the green economy? Here's the big question. If the US is really plotting global domination, who's fighting back? The answer might surprise you, and it's coming up right after this. Key point 5. Global pushback in the multipolar world. Not everyone's buying into the US agenda. In 2025, China and Russia are leading a charge for a multipolar world. The BRICS alliance, now expanded to include Saudi Arabia and Iran, controls 35% of global GDP and is pushing for the countries like India and Brazil are hedging their bets, trading in local currencies to reduce US influence. Meanwhile, the EU is flexing its own muscles, with new regulations targeting American tech giants and trade policies favoring European firms. On X, users are buzzing about Global South resistance, with nations like South Africa and Indonesia rejecting US-led initiatives like the G7's Partnership for Global Infrastructure. Even within the US, dissent is growing. Polls show 55% of Americans want less foreign intervention, per Pew Research. But here's the catch. Can these forces really challenge America's grip? Or is the US too entrenched to lose? The battle for global power is heating up, and 2025 is a turning point. So, is the US really orchestrating a global takeover? Or is this just the chaos of a changing world? The final piece of this puzzle is the most shocking, yet stay with us. World Decoders, the events of 2025 paint a complex picture. Is the US plotting to dominate the world? Or is it just playing the game of global power better than anyone else? From the dollar's grip to tech surveillance, military bases, to diplomatic deals, the evidence is compelling, but so is the pushback. One thing's clear, the world is at a crossroads, and the choices made now will shape the future for decades. What do you think? Is this a conspiracy, or just geopolitics as usual? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this video to spark the conversation, and subscribe to stay ahead of the curve. The world is changing fast, and we're here to decode it all. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep questioning the powers that be. Let's keep the world decoded.